When you first think of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, your mind probably immediately goes to something like this. However, when it comes to JoJo, my mind first reaches to... Hey wait, that's the wrong clip! There are various things in the world that divide humanity, whether it be politics, religion, socioeconomic status. However, there is nothing that divides the human population more than the debate of which JoJo is the best character. And so, I'll give you why Joestar is the best protagonist in JoJo. Don't get me wrong, however, I like all the JoJos and I feel like they all perfectly fit their parts and they're all great characters in their own right. However, any good parent, I clearly favor one child over all the others. It's one thing to note that the majority of JoJos throughout the series are static characters. And before you hit me with that,
well, actually, parts 7 and 8 have very complex characters.
I haven't read those parts, because reading is for goddamn losers. Hey, wait a second, don't I read subtitle? And static characters are basically characters that don't go on clear-cut arcs. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Some of the best characters in all of film are static characters. For example, the man with no name, Paddington, Juror 8. For example, take like Jonathan Joestar. At the start and end of his story, he's a very similar character, you know, except for the fact that he's fucked dead. And similarly, Jotaro at the beginning and at the end of part 3 is still le emo edgy boy. On the other hand, Joseph actually goes through a more clear-cut character arc throughout his part. Near the start, he's basically a complete schizo angry guy who picks a fight with anyone. However, as a result from learning more and understanding the legacy of his bloodline, and as he masters Hamon and matures as a person, meeting characters such as Lisa and he learns to become more honorable and actually respect his opponents. You can see this from his interactions with Wamu. At the start, he basically just sees him as an obstacle and dismisses him and doesn't even care to understand him. However, near the end, he actually shows him respect and gives him an honorable death. Could you actually see Joseph from the start of part 2 respectfully saluting Wamu as he dies, giving him a warrior's death? However, it's not that Joseph's abrasive personality comes out of nowhere and just leaves him being insufferable.
Yeah, welcome to a bear, you fucking...
This main character is so hateable.
Uh-oh, not a doggy.
You can actually infer from his childhood and from his parental abandonment that it makes sense he'll be ending up like this, which makes it all the more satisfying when you see him actually mature and grow as a man. Not only that, his abrasiveness actually works to his advantage, as it helps him differentiate himself from more traditional and archetypal heroes. As from the outside, his story is quite archetypal and generic. I mean, come on, it's pretty obvious. His lineage is made up of magical dudes, and he gets his arm cut off. I mean, it's pretty obvious. See Rocky? I'm calling you out. Jokes aside, I feel like it's really his personality that sets him apart from other characters similar to him. Of course, the most famous example of this is the conclusion of his fight with Strizo. From the way he's speaking, you assume he already has a 900 IQ plan to deal with this situation, in keeping with the way other characters in this series deal with their problems. Well, that is until he hits you with the "I gotta get out of here!" Speaking of the fights, that's one thing JoJo is probably most famous for. There's just something so thrilling about watching two muscular men in tight clothing wrestle each other, and in my opinion, Joseph has some of the best fights in the entire series. And not only that, I feel like these fights are so great because they actually tie into Joseph's personality, which makes him feel like more of a three-dimensional character. Joseph's fights, similar to his personality, are quite unpredictable. Essentially, his main strategy in any fight he gets into is just to throw random bullshit at the wall and to see what sticks. This creates an unpredictability and anticipation to see whatever strategy he comes up with next. Not only that, it helps tie in his actions with what we're told about him from other characters, which actually creates a more consistent characterization for him. Not only that, I like how it factors into the dynamic of part 2 in general, as Joseph is the ultimate underdog. Listen, part 1 and part 3, they're just fighting a gay vampire. In part 4, he's just fighting a guy who's obsessed with the Mona Lisa. You know what Joseph has to put up with in part 2? He has to fight literal Aztec gods, which just makes him so much more likable as he's the ultimate underdog. We can even see this by how he defeats the ultimate life form. As he performs a Hamon move, that's a parallel to the way the entire system of Hamon was introduced, which acts as kind of a conclusion of the Hamon parts of JoJo. Then, the worst thing possible happens to Joseph. He becomes old. Joseph in part 3 is just kind of there. He has some cool fights against Darby and Mariah. However, he never really contributes that much and just kind of feels like he's been nerfed from part 2, which to be honest, I don't really mind, as the story of part 3 isn't really about Joseph. However, in part 4, Joseph is practically non-existent except for one episode, which, in my opinion, acts as the perfect conclusion to his character. What we've all observed right here today, Joseph is an imperfect hero, which I feel means that it's completely within character for him to cheat on his wife. That being said, Joseph also has a heart of gold, which I think is perfectly exemplified by how he sacrifices his life to save just some random baby he's never met, which goes to show that, despite his rough edges, in his core, Joseph is a hero. Which is why, despite what anyone else says, I feel like this one episode acts as the perfect encapsulation and conclusion of Joseph Joestar's arc throughout the entire series of JoJo. So class, what have we learned today? Well, some British people are alright.